All right, let's bring in Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton, who also serves on the Intel Committee and the Judiciary Committee. Easy for me to say. Good morning to you, Senator.
Morning,
Thanks for coming on.
With all of you.
So we know that there are 3 USS, there's ships over there that are protecting the Mediterranean, and I know that they intercepted some missiles coming from Yemen, and also there are troops in Iraq and Syria that are facing drone attacks. What can you tell us?
Lane, so I think it's important that we don't see these in isolation. There's been at least 7 attacks on Americans in the region just in the last 2 days. In addition to these cruise missiles being fired out of Yemen, this is all the hidden hand of Iran. All these organizations, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthi groups in Yemen, militias in Iraq, are all funded by Iran. They're directed by Iran. Iran has said to them, you're off the leash. It's free, open hunting season on Americans. Again, just take the example from Yemen. Yemen isn't known for having cruise missiles. They didn't just make those in the deserts or the mountain passes there. They received that technology from Iran. And I think it's incumbent on President Biden to make it perfectly clear to Iran that we will not tolerate attacks on Americans. This is exactly what President Trump had to say a couple times to Iran, that if these proxy groups harm an American, we will treat it as Iran launching a direct attack on the United States and respond proportionally.
So much in that speech last night could have been like, oh, if I didn't take the Houthi rebels off the terror list, maybe Saudi Arabia wouldn't have been angry at us because they are totally propped up by Iran, who are lobbing rockets into Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia answered back, this administration comes in and goes, that's going to end. So the Houthi rebels have shown the disdain for us by lobbing these rockets at us. We have to respond to this, don't we?
Well,
and should that have been brought up last night? 3 attacks within hours of each other.
It should. It would have no place more powerful for a president to warn our enemies than from an Oval Office address. And I just want to stress again, this has been happening now, not just for the last 3 years, but for 11 years under Barack Obama and Joe Biden. There have been Iran has taken attacks against American forces in the region. They've been largely unresponded to. The Secretary of Defense, under questioning by me earlier this year, acknowledged that since Joe Biden took office, there had been at least 83 attacks against Americans, only 4 responses. And every one of those responses was not against anything in Iran, only against those proxy groups that were striking our forces or our citizens, and only then usually against empty buildings. These attacks will continue, and Americans will die unless Joe Biden is perfectly clear that we will hold Iran directly responsible.
Senator, this is what the president had to say last night. Let's watch.
So let me share with you why making sure Israel and Ukraine succeed is vital for America's national security. You know, history has taught us that when terrorists don't pay a price for their terror, when dictators don't pay a price for their aggression, they cause more chaos and death and more destruction. Iran is supporting Russia's in Ukraine, and it's supporting Hamas and other terrorist groups in the region, and will continue to hold them accountable, I might add.
Was it forceful enough?
No, not at all, for some of the reasons we've already discussed, Lawrence. The president didn't warn Iran directly about these attacks on America. And a lot of the things he talked about last night is a direct result of his own appeasement and the efforts to treat Iran like a normal nation as opposed to a radical revolutionary power that chants death to America and death to Israel.
You know, when you look at what the president, how he wants to allocate money and aid to help Ukraine, last night he talked a lot about Ukraine. Ukraine war has been going on for almost 2 years. Israel was just blasted, and they're our partners, our allies. I thought he should have focused more on Israel instead of Ukraine. It wasn't the opportunity at the time we were talking about during the commercial break to lump them together. But he talked about money. Look how much he's given to Ukraine compared to what he's giving to Israel.
And he wants more.
$60 billion for Ukraine, $14 billion for Israel. J.D. Vance made a good point. He said he is pleading with Congress to not use the war in Israel as a way to push funding for Ukraine. What are your thoughts?
Well, I support Ukraine. I don't support Joe Biden's Ukraine policy because he's pussyfooted around for 20 months and not giving Ukraine what it needed to stop the war from starting in the first place or to win in the early days. That's why this war in Ukraine has dragged on. In Israel, we need to provide them what they need, not just to win this war, because Israel has a modern, advanced, well-supplied army, but to make sure they're ready to deter any further action, say, against Hezbollah on the north. But what we really want to do is examine the details here. You know, another bullet that he announced last night was $10 billion in humanitarian aid. There's a lot that could be smuggled into there. I mean, we just gave $100 million to Hamas, and the State Department's own spokesman acknowledges that that could go to Hamas, not
you can't
to
give
civilians.
them money.
Well, so it's important to understand, like when you send money to Gaza, Hamas is not stealing it and diverting it. Hamas is delivering it. Hamas is effectively the government of Gaza, and we're not going to grant billions of dollars in aid that's just going to be, in effect, resupply for terrorist groups. So when you talked about what we're going to do to address the situation at the border, we have to address that. We need to make legal changes about the way the president is treating migrants at our border. We're not going to spend billions of dollars, though, to put illegal aliens up in New York City hotels. So we have to look at the details of this and see exactly what he's proposing. I suspect that we're going to have to change much, if not most, of what he proposes to make sure it serves the interest of Americans, whether it's related to the war in Ukraine or in Israel, or helping Taiwan, or trying to address the chaos at the border.
He wants $14 billion for border security. I didn't hear him mention border security at all, but that's got to be in the mix. So much of what you guys have been saying over the last few years has panned out. This all is based off the, not all of it, but a lot of it is motivated off the way we left Afghanistan. It told everyone America's done with this region. In goes Russia, and he also mentioned that Ukraine is continuing to fight, and they're fighting and surviving, and they've gotten 50% of their land back. He was the one who said they're going to last 3 days, and he was the one who offered Zelensky a ride, not arms, and he's been slow on the uptick. And it was Obama who gave him MREs and blankets when they were first invaded. It's all about signaling, and you got to show strength.
Yeah.
Is there anyone in that administration that you call that you can lean on to say, listen, you got to change your approach here?
Well, I'm afraid the problem starts at the top, and they all take their cues from President Biden. So the president was right in one regard, that a lot of these crises are linked together. He was wrong in this regard. They're linked, as you say, Brian, by his own weakness. When the United States, the world's only global superpower, projects weakness in one region, then predators in other regions take advantage of it. Afghanistan fell in 2021. Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. Hamas has now launched the deadliest attack on Jews since the Holocaust in 2023. These are all interconnected because they're all based on the premise that Joe Biden is not strong enough to respond to protect America's interests. And when predators see a weak American president, they'll take advantage of it. That's why it's so important that right now he reverse course, just like Jimmy Carter did. Jimmy Carter was not a strong president, but when the Ayatollahs took over in 1979 and took Americans hostages, when Soviet Russia invaded Afghanistan, he did a U-turn. The president has to do a U-turn on his Iran policy and his broader foreign policy.
Well, Senator, he also is not responding back here at home as we see folks in the middle of the street in all the major cities as Hamas is calling for a day of rage. We got folks in America waving Hamas flags, and it just doesn't seem like the administration understands the ideology.
Yeah, I mean, he's got openly anti-Semitic members of his own party in Congress, like Rashida Tlaib, that he will not condemn by name.
Said she's very smart.
And I mean, yeah, and he is essentially apologizing for all of these pro-Hamas rallies. Let's remember, I mean, Hamas didn't just 2 weeks ago butcher babies and burn families alive. They now, to this very moment, still have hostages, babies, children, women in Gaza doing God knows what to them. And the president goes out of his way to keep distinguishing between ordinary Gazans and Hamas. He said last night that Hamas doesn't represent Gaza. I'm sorry, but Gaza literally elected Hamas to represent them. That is literally what they elected Hamas to do.
And you have said you want the foreign nationals here in America that support Hamas to be booted out of the country.
Yeah, look, if you're an American citizen, you have a First Amendment right to make a fool of yourself with morally depraved speech. If you're a foreigner, you don't have such a right. We never allowed fifth columnists to come into our country in the Cold War and support the Communist Party or Soviet Russia. We shouldn't allow foreigners on our soil who are advocating for this radical Hamas ideology either.
Now, the next thing they're apologizing for, but pictures were shown of special operators with the President of the United States in Israel. Faces shown. They quickly blotted him out, have a correction. And here's what the White House said. As soon as it was brought to our attention, we deleted the photo. We regret the errors and any issues that it may have caused. People make mistakes, but is that a mistake that should be made at this level?
Well, I mean, it's a reflection of how little this White House appreciates about military customs, standards, needs, expectations. I mean, the closest Joe Biden or Jake Sullivan ever got to the Army was wearing a soldier's uniform as dress up during Halloween when they were a small child. But you see it all the way down, just like you saw it in the early days of this attack on Israel. You had the Office of Palestinian Affairs or Tony Blinken's own Twitter account calling for a ceasefire or calling for a de-escalation of violence. And they said, well, that doesn't represent the administration position.
Yeah.
Where it certainly represents the kinds of people you've hired in the administration, what their instincts
But,
are.
sir, why was a social media person? I think that the audience needs to understand, in the 45 years of history for Delta Force, this has never happened before. The people that are in foreign lands saw the faces of people that are considered ghosts. Their family members, mothers and fathers, don't even know that they are operators, and now the world knows who they are. They're going to be on hit lists. Does the administration understand what they just did?
No,
they can't put the genie back in the bottle.
I think they have very little appreciation of military customs and standards and expectations. And you see it not just in this instance, but in bigger, the most consequential things, like the collapse in Kabul 2 years ago. The fact that Joe Biden, who's always had a tense, fraught relationship with the military, going back to his time as a senator and vice president, and the kinds of people that come into their White House, they just have zero appreciation of the capabilities of the military, the kind of constraints they face, and they have no real-world experience in it. We saw the pictures earlier of all those semi-trucks lined up outside of Gaza, and Joe Biden and a few other folks in the White House say, like, oh, we can get those trucks in without having making sure there's no weapons or anything else coming in. We're like, really? Like, how's that actually going to happen? So this episode is just kind of a microcosm of how President Biden and White House officials have no real practical experience about military necessity or customs or standards. Unfortunately, you've seen that replayed time and time again.
There was a pro-Israel rally in Times Square, filled most of Times Square. So it was a beautiful image of all the people who do support Israel. Some of the American families, they can't find their loved ones. There are 11 unaccounted for. Some of the families were speaking. Chuck Schumer spoke. What's your reaction?
Well, I'm very grateful for all those patriotic Americans who love Israel and our relationship with Israel, who came out in support of Israel, in support of the families who lost loved ones, either through death or through being held hostage. Because we should remember, this is not just the worst massacre of Jews since World War II. This is one of the worst terrorist attacks on Americans since 9/11 as well. So I commend them for coming out. It's a welcome antidote to all the anti-Semitic pro-Hamas rallies we've seen in the Capitol or on college campuses all around America.
Have you endorsed a candidate for 2024?
I have not. I did not. I chose not to be a candidate, so I'm not going to be a surrogate or a supporter, but I know most of them. I wish them all well.
Has the House chaos hurt the Republican brand?
Well, look, first off, I want to express my continued regret that 8 Republicans joined with all the Democrats to remove Kevin McCarthy. I thought Kevin McCarthy was doing a fine job as Speaker. I wish he was there. I bet there's a lot of regrets now after 2 weeks of spinning their wheels that he was still there as well. Jim Jordan is also one of my closest friends in Washington as well. I hope the House comes together soon and elects a Speaker, not so much for the 2024 election, 13 months from now, but so we can get back to doing the people's business, trying to address all these crises overseas, also trying to address challenges like inflation and crime here at home.
Is it also important to stop acting selfishly? Don't you think there's a lesson to be learned?
Well, especially when you have a small minority in the House, the power that they have comes from their unity. It comes from being able to vote on legislation with 218 Republicans and get to the table with Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden.
Jim Jordan said he's going to call all those 20 holdouts, the ones who didn't vote for him. When will there be a vote? After
I don't know when they're going to have a vote. I just hope, again, that they can work their differences out among themselves and get back as quickly as possible doing the people's business.
It's embarrassing what's happening. We'll have the comments at the top of the 8 o'clock hour when Jim Jordan speaks. Thanks, Senator.
Thank you.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.